Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the meeting, and today is April 13th, Daytona Beach Shores, our city council meeting. Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Mayor Miller?
Yes, present.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Present.
Councilman Bryan?
Here.
Councilman Frizzlone?
Yes.
Councilman Place?
Here.
Thank you. Reverend Bob?
I invite you to stand as you are able and join me in this moment of invocation. Holy One, we come before you tonight, eager for the work of this council and the gathering of citizens in this place. We ask that you would bless those who serve this city, be it as an elected official or a staff member. Bless them with wisdom and strength to accomplish the work that they are called to do. Bless them with good health, and where it is needed, bring your healing power to bear upon the areas of their lives that need healing. Once again tonight, we lift up those who serve this city and its safety needs. We pray that the work they do may be done with confidence and competence and courage and justice for all, and that you would return them home to their families, their loved ones safely each day that they report for duty. Finally, we ask your blessing upon the citizens of this city that come together tonight to witness government and be a part of it. May they feel included, heard, and ideas accepted as they enter these chambers and as they live their lives as neighbors and friends. We ask these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now we come to the part of the evening that I like the best. This is, we have an Employee Service Award. This one goes to Cheryl Thibault. It's funny because my husband always says I'm a bull in a china shop, and I think Cheryl can attest to that. While I'm walking up and down the floors, I never get that door quite right, so I'm getting it, and here comes the mayor. So we've just developed quite a relationship, and you're very, very special to me, Cheryl. So if you want to come up, Fred is going to give you an award. Thank you so much for your 15 years of service. It's greatly appreciated.
For those of you guys that don't know Cheryl works on the second floor in the building division. And so when you come up off the elevator, if you've ever gotten a building permit or applied for one, you typically see Cheryl. Now we've actually hired a new. Gwen used to fill in, help out with Cheryl, but Cheryl's always carried the load, and she does a great job. And I can't believe it's been 15 years already. But she has a new helper now that she's training, Muriel. So that should be a good thing. But I wanted to thank you for your 15 years, Cheryl, and here's your little pin and your award there. And
Thank you, Cheryl. We greatly appreciate you. Okay, next we'll go on to the approval of the minutes. First, the City Council Economic Workshop minutes from March 23rd, 2021. Do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the City Council minutes from March 23rd, 2021. A motion to accept those?
Want to call roll?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can we take a roll, please?
At the same time.
Thank you.
And I apologize, my computer's running very slow. So who made the motion?
I did.
And then,
I seconded it. Richard.
thank you. I don't
That's
know
fine.
why. This is going to take a little bit here.
That's fine.
Okay. Councilman Councilmember Frizzalone,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Plius,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer,
Yes.
Mayor Miller.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next, we'll go on to city council minutes from March 23rd, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to accept. Second.
Councilman Frizzalone and Vice Mayor Lindau.
That one I got. I'm waiting.
We're waiting with you.
I'm just,
No.
I feel like on Jeopardy, there, right?
okay, so all right. Councilmember Frizzalone,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer,
Yes.
Councilmember Plius,
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan,
Yes.
Mayor Miller.
Yes, thank you. We have no items on the consent agenda, so we'll move right on to our city attorney report. Attorney Carey, what do you have for us this evening?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We've reviewed and negotiated a contract for additional parking for Halifax Health.
John, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. We've reviewed and negotiated a contract for additional parking for Halifax Health. They're here to talk about that tonight. We've been working on the micro-mobility devices, something else that you'll see on the agenda. We've got some additional changes that Fred and Stewart are going to be discussing with you, some changes that the staff came up with after the discussion at the meeting 2 weeks ago. Reviewed a notice of appeal and case file for an appeal of a special magistrate code enforcement final order. The notice of appeal was filed. There has been no actual appeal filed, but the notice indicates that it will be coming. Provided a couple legal opinions to the police chief regarding some recent court decisions, one from the first DCA and one from the U.S. Supreme Court. You negotiated agreement for the FPL contract that we'll be hopefully seeing in 2 weeks. I've been drafting a findings of fact for a variance that was approved by PCB, and also drafting a legal opinion for the finance director regarding a sewer assessment. Thank you.
John, can you explain to me on that code enforcement, what does that mean? Do we have one case that went before the special magistrate that's going further, or without naming names?
The special magistrate filed a final order in a case against a certain property, which means that the case has basically reached its final disposition at the magistrate level. Anybody has a right to appeal a code enforcement case to the circuit court. It goes directly to the circuit court, it doesn't go to the council. And so the notice of appeal must be filed within 30 days. They filed it on the 30th day, and then they have 70 days to file the actual appeal.
How much money is involved?
I believe the fine was in the $40,000 range, 44 maybe, somewhere around that point.
I think we're getting a nod from our code enforcement officer. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Anything else?
Can you explain the police legal opinion briefly?
Yeah, so there were two opinions that that came down that are relevant to the police department. The first is the first DCA opinion regarding Marcy's Law. You may remember Marcy's Law was a constitutional amendment that was passed recently that shields victim information from public disclosure. There was a case up in Tallahassee where the police officers were attacked, returned fire in defense of themselves, and the media was trying to get the names of the police officers. The legal question was, does Marcy's Law protect the name of the police officers from disclosure if the police officers are victims of aggression? And the first DCA said yes, it does, so that the city doesn't have to release the names. And so that was that one. The other case was a U.S. Supreme Court case that dealt with immunity for if the officers were involved in a shooting. I don't remember the details of it now. It was a few weeks ago that I looked at it. I need to review the memo I sent out real quick. But it basically wouldn't really be implicated in the city's day-to-day operations unless the officer was involved in an unjustified shooting, which hopefully doesn't happen.
Okay, any other questions for our attorney before we move on?
The sewer assessment opinion, what was that?
Attorney Brian, we can't hear you.
The sewer assessment opinion, what was that?
City manager.
So there's a property in town that used to have a building on it and no longer does. And, but it's got a water hookup. And the code has language basically indicating that there's, if there's a water hookup, that they have to pay a sewer assessment. And so, the question for the finance director wanted answered is, how do we move on that? I provided an initial opinion and then got some feedback from him that there was a little bit of misunderstanding on my part regarding whether there was an actual sewer hookup or not. So the fact that there is not has led me to tell him I'm going to need to hold off on issuing this opinion until I can research it a little bit more. So I don't have a final conclusion on that yet because of the misunderstanding of fact about whether there was actually a hookup or not.
And I have a question for, is Kurt still on?
Yes.
Do we give people a break on sewer if, for example, they're using water to fill a swimming pool?
Yeah, we have some policies for things like that, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for our attorney? If not, we'll move on. City Manager Booker is unable to be with us this evening, so instead, we have Assistant City Manager, Director of Finance, Kurt Swartzlander. What do you have for us this evening, Kurt?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. I'd just like to go ahead and read into the record Mr. Booker's city manager's report. I'm going to add a few little things to it. First thing, Armed Forces Day. The keynote speaker for our Armed Forces Day ceremony on Saturday, May 15th will be Ernie Audino, who's a Brigadier General in the U.S. Army. Ernie is working as Congressman Michael Waltz's District Director, and a special thanks to Mayor Miller for getting him to speak at our event this year. City park maintenance. Mr. Booker has discussed the options outlined by the City Council regarding current and future county oceanfront park maintenance by the city with the county manager. The county manager understands the issues as presented and he is considering options. Next issue, Bank of America. And unfortunately, Bank of America, as I think most people have heard, is closing its doors. And due to that fact, Mr. Booker and most of staff believe it's imperative that the city actively pursue acquisition of this property. It's strategically located close to the Shores Pavilion, McElroy Park, and the soon-to-be-open Halifax Urgent Care Facility. This would provide, this is my add-on, this would provide additional parking for special events, which is, if you've been to our special events at the park, you know it's much needed, so that would be a big help in that. And then the last item, medical marijuana. The city has been approached regarding the possibility of opening a medical marijuana clinic. It pleases the council. Mr. Booker would like to gather more information on this issue. There are several clinics in the surrounding area, and all are run professionally and held to a very strong regulation. Most look like just any other clinic, and none have had any negative impact on the areas where they operate.
Kurt, would this be, driving up and down International, I see a few that do look very conservative, very well done, a true something or other I think I've seen. Would it be similar to that? Do we know who's approached the city, which?
Just a local attorney,
Okay.
reputable local attorney, is all we know. We don't.
On behalf of his
On
client?
behalf of his client, yes. We don't know that client as far as I'm aware. Just the attorney.
Thank you. The Bank of America, I want to assure everyone in the audience and as far as our council is, the city manager, the assistant city manager, and myself had several meetings with people of Bank of America, more or less pleading with them because of the demographics of our area, how people walk across the street, they don't want to go across the bridge. We felt at the time, and we met with them every month or every other month, we felt like our pleas were really going on deaf ears, but the last message that we got when it was, we got it about 2 weeks before they sent the letters out, and we were very, very disappointed. But as Kurt has explained, that property is something that would really fit in with a master plan that some of our staff is interested in doing. So I am going to take it upon myself to reach out to the vice president of the Southeast that I was dealing with to get us in contact with the real estate for Bank of America. I'm hoping that they will see that bank properties aren't a hot commodity in the shores. We've had Wells Fargo and SunTrust up at the north end that have been closed for years with no action on that. So I'm hoping that they would be willing to do something with this.
I have a couple of questions on that item. From what you just said, I assume we have no idea of what they might be thinking about getting for that property.
No, not until the people I were dealing with were in the banking part of it, and they were going to have their real estate people on the last call, and they weren't able to attend the call. So, we don't know what it's appraised for. No information.
Does anybody on the staff have any ideas about what the city would use that building for?
We've just had, preliminary discussions, and that's kind of what the mayor alluded to. We've talked about looking at a possible master plan down the road, covering all of our parks, but how we would use that property in conjunction with existing facilities and uses at the location there.
Yeah, I don't know, I would guess the building, if somebody wants it, the building is worth as much as the land or more. And it's not clear to me what the city would use it for, and apparently nobody else has given much thought to that at this point in time.
Well, I think they have given thought to it, Councilman, but, until we know if we can acquire it or not, the very least we would use it for is parking in that area. So then we probably would not need the building, is that correct?
At this point,
Okay.
I don't.
Well, so we just really start talking about that, so, as we go further down the road, do you have some suggestions?
No, my comment is basically if we have to pay for the building and we don't have we're planning to tear it down, I'm not sure that would necessarily be a wise use of money.
But if I could comment, in addition to the proximity that Kurt mentioned of the other facilities, we also have public safety there too. So that's another thing that's right in that same vicinity.
Okay, I realize it's preliminary, I just want
Yeah, I'm still at the very, very early stages. Okay, any other questions of, or any other comments on this report? Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, next we're going to go on to old business. And this was the discussion of ordinance 2021-02, the mobility device with staff. So after the last meeting, I reached back out to the attorney, and I'm sorry if I didn't bring it up at the time, Attorney Carey. My understanding was, or my hope was, that permit that we were going to require was for the owners of the scooters, not for the individual. And I don't think that's what was clear in the first one, so we've asked you to go back. So is someone from staff, is Fred going to explain it to us first, and then you'll follow up?
Yeah, I think Fred is going to explain the changes that staff recommended as a result of the discussion at the last meeting.
And Fred, thank you very much
for
for
the changes that he's going to discuss.
Okay, thank you very much for taking that on.
That just broke.
Yeah.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, residents. So at our last meeting, ordinance 2021-02, it kind of came together kind of quick, and our staff, we didn't really get a lot of chance to get through it all, and so we spoke with John, and we spoke with you, obviously, and so we did our review, and we came up with some changes, and by and large, I think we passed around a copy of the changes that we're proposing, and we're not. We won't get our feelings hurt if you don't agree with us or anything like that. But the main two changes, I would call the big two changes, is the first one that you alluded to just now was not requiring the individual retailers to come in and get their $100 permits, and instead requiring the company to get one $1,000 permit. So that would be the first, that was the first big one. And then the second one being that staff felt really the current ordinance grandfathered in some of the hotels, but then the rest of the hotels would be prohibited from being able to have these staged in front of their places. And we felt, given that hotels have a lot of, tourists staying with them because they are in the habit of renting bicycles, floats, chairs, umbrellas, what have you. They do all golf carts, they do that kind of thing. We kind of felt like the use of being able to provide that recreational amenity for their guests, it's more of a normal association with that type of use, as opposed to, say, an ice cream shop being able to do it, or the tattoo parlor having 5 sitting in front of it. So we just felt like we should expand, especially during this pilot program, the retailer to allow hotels to do it as well. But if you don't mind, I'll go through real quick the list. The first change was, as I said, adding hotels to a retailer. The second change, we're proposing, instead of having just the company have 100, I think the original ordinance said 100 scooters that the company could have max in their fleet. And currently we have about 11. I think when Gwen went out and did her analysis, there was 11 or so places doing it, and so it was probably a little over 100 as it was. And so we're recommending that we increase that to 150, but we also, while we're giving them the permit, we'd be able to either increase or decrease how that fleet size would be based on the, how things are going in the city, whether or not, just because at this point we have one company go X, we may end up with multiple companies, and it may not be prudent to have each one be allowed to have 100, we may want to restrict it to a lower amount. So that's what we were thinking. The third.
This one, Fred, was per company, but then with the understanding, right, if another company came in.
Right. The original proposal in the first reading ordinance was that the company would be allowed, each company would be allowed to have 100, and I think there was an allowance that it could go up or down. It could go one way but not the other. But we're proposing raising it to 150 and allowing it to be modified up or down, but in no case higher than 250.
All right, thank you.
The third.
50 would be for all of the companies combined.
Well, the way it's written right now, it'd be 250 would be just, if we only had one, and because theoretically, we're thinking when this pilot program gets started, you have 11 that have been doing it. We're thinking that it'll probably be expanded somewhat, and so with each business having 12 scooters at their place, it doesn't take you long to get to 150. 10 is that you're at 120, so, and we already have 11 doing it now, so.
Those are retailers. I'm talking about companies. There's a difference now.
Right, what I'm saying is though that that's why we're recommending that the fleet size be over 100 for the company, because currently we have almost that many, more than 100 operating in the city, so 150.
It says we got 100, but up to 250. But what if 2, 3, 4, 5 companies come in?
Then he said we'd look at it.
Then we would look at, when we're giving the company their permits, we would have the ability to modify, to increase or decrease their fleet size based on what's going on around the city. If we get 4 companies in town and they all, we wouldn't, obviously by the time the second and third and fourth one came around, we'd be wanting to try to reduce so that we don't get, each company having 150, and then we got 600 of these things running around. So
Right.
that was the logic, that we'd be able to go both ways with that. The third change that we propose is, I mentioned eliminating the permit requirement for the retailers and reducing the amount. The original ordinance said each retailer could have 20 scooters at their location, and we suggest reducing that to 12. The application fee, as I mentioned, instead of it being $100 per retailer and $100 for the company, we recommended just one permit for the company, $1,000. Staging, we've allowed them, or we're proposing to allow each staging area to have a small instructive 24 by 36 inch sign that would have any instructions that we would want, and to let them know that this is a designated pickup and drop off point for the scooters.
I like that, Fred.
And we also, the original ordinance, I think, said that the scooters had to be removed from the staging area when the business is not open. And we felt like that might be a little cumbersome, either the company having to come pick all these up at the end of every night, or the retailers having to bring them inside their location, and some of these aren't, it's probably not wise necessarily to store them inside. So we're proposing that they be allowed to leave the staged ones out there as long as and we've chosen 36 hours, but you may not like that. You may want, but if you're going to be closed longer than 36 hours, you need to bring them in. But if you're just closing for the evening at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and you're opening up, the next day, or possibly even then following Sunday morning, that you could still leave them out there and they could still be used. But and then we also proposed a change for maintenance, cleaning, and non-staging activities that would not be visible from the right-of-way. We've also, 6 change was amended to assure companies not the retailers rent the mobility devices to only those with a valid driver's license. We've added a requirement for a horn or a warning device to let people know when they're coming up. And we've also imposed a provision, and this would be up to councils. We picked 9 p.m. at night, that after, we figured that after a certain period of time in the evening, you probably wouldn't want these things running around. We chose 9. You might think it should be 11, but we proposed 9. We have proposed a requirement to require the company, when they get their permit, to provide us with who their retailers are, and then to bi-weekly update that with us. So if they add or subtract, we're able to know where those are. We also put in a requirement to require the drop-offs and returns only be allowed at the designated retailer locations. We put in a proposal to require the agreements between the companies and retailers provide penalty provisions. So if the retailer's not doing what the company has asked them to do, if their scooters are being left in various places, that there be some type of penalty provisions for that, for not keeping them maybe in a nice orderly fashion or what have you. And then some modification we proposed to the indemnification language. And that's basically it. So.
So the one that required drop-off and returns only allowed at retailers, so behind us, like is that Shores parking lot, if someone just dumps it there, were they saying they have a GPS and they would able to locate that it wasn't dropped off at a authorized location and they would go and get it? Remember that from
I heard at the meeting that this gentleman was at, that they had a couple of things. One, that wherever it was left, their GPS would tell them where it was left. But 2, I thought they had the capability to find the user in the event, like there'd be some type of penalty if you just drop it off in the middle of the street or in the parking lot or a sidewalk or something of that nature.
We do charge them.
Okay, what questions do we have of our director that he's made these changes along with his staff? Thank you very much. I can tell a lot of thought went into this. I thank you for you and your staff that helped with this.
Sure, and we recognize it's just a pilot program, and so this is sometime around, if this is all working great and we like it, maybe a few tweaks, but probably October come fall we're going to have to start working on, because this sunsets at the end of December. But it'll give us some time to see how things are going, what we like, what we don't like. But these are just some things that we thought from both the code enforcement perspective, and then just holding the individual retailers and make all of them come down and having to process all those permit applications and going through that. We just felt like it'd be easier to hold the company accountable.
Fred, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What did you have in mind as far as what warning devices are? I think it may need more definition than just warning device.
I think we were just thinking a horn or some audible, a bell. We talked about a bell or a horn or.
They all have a bell.
They all have a bell, so they all have a bell. To us, that would be, I know Councilmember Lindauer was
I
concerned.
think it's a good idea. I just think warning device might be a voice.
Yeah, well, I think the language says,
I think you put
It
bell
says
or
warning device, and I just wanted.
does it?
Maybe it's
warning device. Horn or warning device, so horn or bell.
Yeah. Well, they have bells on them now, so we would work that out with the company before we gave them their permit. So we wouldn't accept a verbal, warning.
Fred, I have a few questions,
Yes, sir.
so I understand and so the residents understand too. I like the fact that they have to have a driver's license, but that is obvious not what's happening now, because you see all these kids that are 10 and 12 years old running around. The fact they have to have a driver's license would seem to improve things some, but does that also give the police department control over this if they see somebody violating any of the regulations that have to do with this.
So the driver's license was to rent it, but if I rent it, I can have my 14-year-old son.
My understanding, John can answer. I mean, it's a preemption
I'm
thing.
completely,
Right.
so if I
So,
may, if I may, I'm
yes.
completely opposed to that. No one should be able to drive these without a driver's license, in my view of the world.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's,
thought that-
I think it's absolutely ridiculous to have families come in, rent them for their 12-year-old boys, and, you know, do a family affair up and down the beach and through A1A. I think that there's no one who I believe that this is what it's intended for. So I believe that having a driver's license really separates church from state in terms of safety. And I don't think it's a little point, Vice Mayor. I think it's a huge point. Having somebody who knows how to operate a motor vehicle, who's been, you know, up and down the streets, highways, and what have you, is a completely different person than someone's, you know, 10-year-old son or 12-year-old son's, you know, skirting around with their family. And that's what you see. You see families coming to hotels and renting these out, 4, 5, 6 of them, because it's a wife and a husband and 4 children. And that's, I believe that is very unsafe for the residents of our city.
You know, I see them racing side by side, 2 and 3 wide up the street. One of the things about this proposed ordinance that I really liked was that, and also the training requirement and the single file. Those address the issues that I've seen and have. But to let the kids continue to do it without the training, and the main thing with the driver's license is it gives city staff, it gives the police the authority to move in and say, let me see your driver's license. And you're going to get violators if they see, I'm not talking about going around just checking everybody to make sure they have a driver's license, but I'm talking about if they see unsafe conditions, then I think the police should have the authority to move in, and they do if they've got a driver's license. All they have to do is just the same as they stop a car that's doing something unsafe, they should be able to stop one of these vehicles.
And see, my thought was, and it's probably a little bit different than both of those, like at our pool in our area, you have to, if you're under 16 years old, you have to be accompanied by a parent or a guardian. So I do not want to see 12 or 14-year-olds on the street by themselves operating this. But if I see a mother and a father and a 14 and a 15-year-old, that the parents are with them, you know, they're responsible. If anything goes wrong, we have the parents right there, you know, if anything. So I'm thinking a little bit different, but.
I think, and I think Attorney Carey can speak to it, but with regards to if somebody's on one of these and they're acting dangerous, and I don't want to speak for the chief, but if they're getting in and out of traffic and causing a problem, whether they have a driver's license or not, I think the police could probably do something about that. But with regards to we're preempted, is my understanding, from the state to be able to, these things are legal. Like if a kid goes to Walmart and buys one and gets on it, it's just like a bicycle, is my understanding. I'll let John.
Yeah, John, if you could help us with that.
Yeah, so the state writes the traffic code.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because the state wants to be able to test you and make sure you know the rules of the road, and that you don't have to know the rules of Daytona Beach versus Daytona Beach Shores versus Ponce Inlet every time you cross city limits. So the state uniform traffic code, it says uniform right in the name because they want it to be the same across jurisdictions. So as far as operation, and this is also confirmed in case law, the 2 cases, the ones in Bay County, ones in Panama City Beach, where the courts held essentially that we can regulate on the rental end. But as far as the operational aspect of it, that's the state that makes the rules, and so we can't override the state's rules. So the chief already has the power, if somebody's driving unsafely, whether they're allowed to be on the road or not, to address that. But you know, merely pulling somebody over because they don't have a license, the fact is the state doesn't require a license for driving these kind of vehicles, and so the chief doesn't have any authority to require it from the city.
Can we require that a parent be with them?
I don't think so.
So let me see if I understand what you're saying to me, because I want to go slow here. What you're saying is that we, as the city of the city council of Daytona Beach Shores, can regulate the rental of our units of these motor scooters that they have to have a driverless license at 16 years old. That is correct. What we can, so far nod your head.
Right.
So what we can't do is we cannot have Daytona Beach or Ormond or New Smyrna, who does not agree with the city council that's here. They can rent out to 8-year-olds, and we have to deal with the 8-year-olds that are driving here.
Right.
And my answer to that is that we should regulate 16-year-olds and take a leadership position. As Mel said before about COVID, the buck stops here. The buck should stop here. And maybe if we send out a message that you have to have a motor vehicles license to be able to operate one of these, everyone else will get on board.
Yeah, that misses the point that John was making. You can't regulate the operation, you can only regulate the rental. And you can't keep somebody from renting with a driver's license and letting somebody else ride it.
That's not what he said.
Yeah,
That's not what he
part of
said.
the rental agreement.
That's not what he said, Richard.
Would you explain it again? Would you clarify it one more time, Attorney Carey?
Okay, so we can regulate rental.
So what
we
does
can
that mean,
require-
regulate?
So we can require that somebody has a driver's license in order to rent a vehicle. What we can't do is stand at the city limits and prevent anybody who's rented one in Daytona Beach from crossing the Daytona Beach Shores city limits because.
I agree with the mayor. I still want to go slow. You're not, with all respect,
Okay.
I want to go slow here. I am a parent. I have a 12-year-old.
You're a parent with a driver's
I'm a
license.
parent with a driver's license. I have a 12-year-old, and I'm staying at the Shores Resort and Spa. And I walk over and I say to them, here's my driver's license.
Here's my money.
Here's my money. Thank you, Mayor. And I walk over and I go to my 12-year-old daughter and say, Michelle, hop on that thing and have at it. What I'm saying is that what I want, and if I can't have it, that's fine. But what I want as a council person for the residents is to be able to say to that person, sir, we will take your driver's license, but your daughter in order for her to be able to ride, Mr. Frizzalone, she has to also have a driver's license.
And you're saying you can't do that?
I don't, he's saying we can.
Yes. Let me throw out another idea.
Well, let
Hold on, Mel, hold on. Let
him,
him finish
yeah.
his thought.
Let the council, could you please, the scenario that Councilman Frizzalone is giving you, can we say, no, Michelle, you can't have that? I thought that you just said we can't regulate who uses it.
That's not what he said.
Oh.
We can regulate the rental of the vehicles.
That's what he's saying. But I want to be clear. What you're saying
I
is
think
over.
we could strengthen the wording to say that you cannot rent to a person who's under the age of 6, or who doesn't have a driver's license, I should say it like that.
That's huge. That is the difference between, what I'm saying to my fellow council members and the mayor, that's the difference between night and day. The fact that an owner of a hotel can say, I cannot rent this to you for use unless the person has a valid driver's license, that changes the dynamics of everything.
Right, and we can regulate the rental end, and where I want to try to be clear on this is, you all have also said, can the chief pull somebody over for not having a driver's license riding a scooter?
I don't think the chief wants to get involved in pulling people over for motor scooters. The notion is that we as a city council have a decision to make. Do we want 8 and 10-year-olds with motor scooters because their parents say it's okay? And given the parent thing that I see, I got to tell you, I'm very worried about it. And honestly, so, I mean, frankly, everybody wants to. I don't want to get into it, but the parenting that I see right now, you're going to have a lot of people with 8 and 10 and 12-year-olds zipping up and down here, and nobody cares, and it's nobody's responsibility until somebody actually gets hurt. And then everybody cares, and it's everybody's responsibility. And we have the ability to say now, if you are in New Smyrna, or if you are in Ormond, or if you are in Ponce Inlet, we can't stop it. You can have an 8-year-old here, we really can't do anything about it. But if you are renting here from a hotel or from a business here, you must be 16 years old to operate one of these motor scooters. And I have no idea for the life of me why we wouldn't do that.
Well, can I propose something?
Would we win or lose that battle in court?
I think if we're just regulating it from the rental end, we.
No. His scenario where the parent rents it and lets their child use it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can probably put a provision in here, add a provision that says specifically that if you're renting it, you're renting it on your own behalf.
Exactly, and
So-
only the person who rented it can operate it, and that person has to have a driver's license, so you're not saying anything, but you're just making it go through that the person who rents it has a driver's license, and only that person can operate it.
That's fine.
Doesn't that solve the problem?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can do that. So, you know, again, as long as we're not
I
asking.
think that's
the
gonna be
chief
very hard to enforce.
Well, enforcing is a separate matter.
At least you're putting a line in the sand, Mayor. You're drawing a line in the sand.
And as long as the chief isn't going around looking for people who look too young and just saying if they have a driver's license, because these are street legal vehicles that don't require a license.
I think we need to get, maybe an idea from the company too, because most of these I think everybody knows, but you were talking about handing somebody your driver's license. Most of these are rented with your phone, with an app. You walk up to the scooter, you scan it or whatever you do, and then, so within their system, if they have a requirement that somehow you have a picture of your driver's license on your phone, I don't know.
We could probably
like
do that.
something like that they would have to do, but that's how they rent them, is then they typically don't hand it to a vendor and the vendor check and go, yep, that's you.
So I think the question is then, from the operator standpoint, they put something in their language that says that you're agreeing that you're using it for your personal use and you're a licensed driver or something along those lines. Yeah.
I agree. Listen, you can't stop a parent from going to a liquor store. I can go to Publix right now at 18, and I can go out and I can get some beer and wine, and I can give it to my 16-year-old daughter because I'm okay with that. I'm not going to. You can't. But at least there's a line in the sand that says I have to go buy it, and then I have to sneak it to her. That's a very different thing than my daughter being able to walk up at 12 years old or 14 years old. I just don't understand why, as a city, we would want 8-year-old. I mean, that's what I see it on the beach. It's astounding to me. And at the end of the day, why would we take the risk of a resident getting hurt? That's my only issue. That is the only issue.
And I totally agree with you, and if we can do it, I think it's great. The attorney says he thinks we can, and so I think we're all set.
Yeah, if we do you must have a driver's license to rent, and only the person who rents it can drive it. I mean, that seems to me like that would
And then
solve the problem.
they'd be certifying that through the rental, through their language, and then, we can add a provision that says essentially it's a violation of the code to violate the terms of service that they agreed to when they rented it. So that you can create the underlying violation, that would be, for violating the terms of service that they agreed to when they rented it.
I would also suggest, Madam Mayor, you are a phenomenal leader. You've done a great job in leadership. You know all the mayors. You can reach out and say to them what we're doing, and we would appreciate their help because we don't want to have underage children zipping around here, potentially causing damage to cars and residents. And perhaps some of those mayors, I know you have a great relationship with them, will take you up on that offer.
I can certainly talk about
And
that.
certainly try.
My concern is for the residents. When I come off the beach because the tide's high, I walk on the streets and I see these things, 3 wide, racing each other, coming up on an elderly person, and they just don't know how to react. Now, the horns will help, hopefully, single file will help, but they have to follow the rules, and where is the training coming in? Because we have training in the ordinance. But is it going to be because the people who are renting, the hotel owners, they are not actually interfacing with these people at all.
It's just the app.
The app is good.
Or the majority of the retailers. I know the one.
Where's the training going to come in to tell them you're training
It's a
single?
joke.
It would have to be.
It's all one big wink and a
It would have to be a video on the app.
Okay.
There's
It would have to be,
And to the Vice Mayor's point, it's not just, I see it on the beach. So now you have 10 and 12-year-olds with these motor scooters competing against trucks because you have a driver's lane on the beach. So think about it. You have people laying out on the beach, who are enjoying themselves. There's cars going behind them, and then there's motor scooters zipping out in between the people who are walking or having a nice day on the beach, plus competing against the trucks and the cars that are driving in the driver's lane. I mean, at what point do you look in the mirror and say, this is crazy?
well, I just want to say that I am looking for the happy balance. I want our residents protected, but I want people to enjoy too. So let's find a way that we can make everybody happy. I like to see the businesses get the extra income, but I don't want to see it at the expense of our residents' safety. That's my concern.
All right, can we ask the owner? All right.
I think we have consensus that we asked the operator to require the driver's license, and the only person that rented it can use it.
That works for me.
That works for me.
And enforcing it is a totally different, you know.
To go along with the other-
Councilman, you're 100% correct in your assertion, but having said that, at least we've drawn a line in the sand, and it's on them, and perhaps maybe in time, you know, with Captain Fowler and the chief's leadership, perhaps maybe if they see people zipping around and doing crazy things, they can stop them. So, I mean, let's take it one day at a time, but at least we've drawn a line in the sand up front.
Yeah, and if you see somebody 10 or 12 years old driving, it's obviously they're in violation because they don't have a driver's license and the contract calls for it.
Only if they rented it from somebody in the shores. If they rented it
Correct.
someplace else.
That is correct.
It would not be.
But the mayor can take a leadership position. She's got a great relationship, and she can take a leadership position at the mayor's meeting, saying this is what we're doing, and we'd appreciate it if you follow suit.
And one other thing too, I think that we're going to have a problem in that when we see people or kids driving these things three wide, not having a horn or not letting the people know when they're passing them, they could actually own these things, couldn't they?
Yeah, we can.
And we have no control.
They don't have to be rented, they could be owned.
And that's fine, again. All we're trying to do is draw a line in the sand.
Can you just come, I'm sorry, I forgot your first name.
Jared.
Jared, okay. Jared, do you rent these in Daytona?
Some, yeah.
You do,
Yeah,
okay.
but we actually kind of focus on South Daytona and Ormond and,
So you run them in South Daytona?
I mean, this area, the shores.
Okay, all right. And right now, so if the proposal we would like to do, you've heard this about the 16-year-old.
I have.
Okay, so would that be something that you would put in the app when they're signing? Or?
Yeah, and actually, once they actually activate their ride, they go through a few different screens that say, you know, don't ride on the sidewalk. You have to be over
Don't
16.
ride on the sidewalk?
Don't ride on the sidewalk. I can have them say that. And I don't know if you really want that, because that's what you'd rather them on the sidewalk, right? So we can we can tell them to stay on the sidewalk, however you want to do it.
Right now, we're mostly focusing on the, you know, you must have a driver's license.
Right.
You must be the one that's operating it once you.
Right.
So you-
And that's, and like you said, I mean, it's not just, our scooters. I mean, anybody can go to Walmart and buy one of these things. So you're kind of like, and I understand what you're saying about having young people on it, but again, it's the parents that are going to give these scooters to them, and it's hard to say, I can't make them,
Exactly. But,
basically.
I
I understand what you're saying about, I don't want little children on the things either.
Exactly, but at least we're taking the stance, this is what we're at least trying to do.
Right, I understand that. As far as, I haven't seen all what you guys have came up with. Everything else seems okay, I think, from what I'm hearing, it's what we can work with. As far as, I didn't understand the part about at some point during the night, you want them to shut down though?
After 9 o'clock at night was how late do they?
Well, that's the thing, is at nighttime is typically when people ride more than during the day, because it's hot during the day. So the bulk of the riding does happen in the evening. 7, 8 o'clock is usually our biggest time of the night. And then you're going to tell me that they have to come home, bring it back and get off the roads at 9 o'clock is going to be challenging for us.
Okay.
But I did see just last night when I was out, I saw three youngsters going up A1A. It was dark, and they had no light on the.
Those might not have been our scooters, because every one of our scooters has a light.
Okay, well
They have a light on top. They have a light they have a brake light.
Good. These did not have. I don't know whether they owned them or they were running from.
And you could totally require us to have lights on all of them, because they already do, and they have bells.
Councilman Bryan, can we wait so we can all hear the conversation? Thank you.
And so, yeah, that would be my only concern. And then the other, we're going to limit how many are at each location, and that's fine. What I'd like to ask that we have some sort of leeway a little bit on it, because somebody might rent it at Boogie Down. And, you know, there might be a group of 5 people, and then they go and drop it off at Cyberfields, and those 5 people, that Cyberfields already had their 10, and they have 15, and our ops team can come and get them. But I don't want them to be in violation for that, you know, hour or whatever it is, however long it takes for us to go and even things out and get, you know, take some scooters away from there to get back to that sweet spot number that you want.
Do your, each individual scooter have a unique ID on it?
Yes, they all have a GPS number on them where they're tracked all the time.
So you can see when there's 10 or 15?
Yeah, I can see each location. I can see if they're, you know, if one spot has 20 and another spot has 5, we always kind of balance it out. We don't want too many scooters or not enough scooters at any place.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
may I speak? I hear all these arguments and I hear all these positions, and they're all very legitimate. Why don't we allow our city attorney and Fred Hyatt and this gentleman to kind of get together? I'm not trying to, no disrespect, I'm not trying to put the fox telling them how to run the hen house, but maybe some of his input would have some common sense denominator that will make the ordinance realistic and practical. Remember, we, as the legislative body for the city, we have to pass laws that are not arbitrary and capricious. And John knows that language real well. That's where we get dinged. And that's where you get sued when you're not consistent with other not necessarily municipalities, but you don't want to go contrary to state law. But that's my recommendation. I mean, we're just playing with this rough draft, and whoever did this outline did a good job. I did my own before we got here. But why don't we just let them tweak it a little bit and then bring it back, and then we'll satisfy Rick's concerns, Mel's concerns, Commissioner Bryan's, Councilman Bryan's, everybody's concerns.
So, Jared, what I'd like you to do is get Fred to get you a copy of this, and then I want you to highlight the things that you have a question about. So the
Oh, he
9,
needs the ordinance too, the proposed ordinance.
the proposed ordinance. So the 9 PM of that, you know, and I'm not saying we're going to change that, but at least I would like you to get with our staff for those couple of items. I see that you also, I didn't see this before, I'm sorry, that you wanted to speak.
I just put my name on there so I could come up and
Okay.
speak if you guys had questions.
Well, you got lucky, you got more than the.
Well, I think you understand our concerns.
I do. And we have the same concerns.
Work together to make this work. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
Safety of the
Again, you know, it's hard for us to balance. We want to do what's right. And, you know, I enjoy seeing, and I know from someone that vacationed here for years and years and years, our kids were at the ocean and at the pool all day long, and then at night, it's like, what do you do with them?
Yeah.
So, you know.
I mean, they love it and they do have a good time at night. And because of the heat around here, it does light up at night, you know. So that is something to take into consideration, I think. But I'd be happy to sit down with anybody and.
Councilman Bryant has one other question for you.
The council, do you have a time in mind other than 9 PM?
It would be later. I mean, I don't know, you know, it kind of naturally, after midnight, it kind of naturally slows down. But, you know, I would have to really kind of look at the analytics and kind of see, you know, when it really dips. And I don't know what you're asking, because as far as like.
If I may, Jared, I can't imagine there are a lot of parents that want their 16-year-old children running around at midnight on scooters.
No, it usually becomes an adult crowd towards in the later, or, you know, older children. It's not 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds, you know, 11, 12 o'clock at
I
night.
should do a pub crawl on one of those things.
There you go.
Okay, any other questions? Or
I think bicycles have to have a light at night.
I believe so. I think they at least have to have a rear light, or I'm not sure what yeah.
They would be
And that's the thing, these
violation.
are pretty similar to a bicycle. I mean, bicycles actually go, especially electric bicycles and stuff, they go much faster than these scooters do. You know,
So they would be in violation of state law if they didn't have.
I mean, we can also put it in the ordinance if you want, that they have to be equipped with some sort of lighting system.
are all of yours equipped with?
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, any other question? I have someone else that wanted to speak on this subject. Thank you so much, Jared.
Let me know if, so I just hook up with these guys?
Fred.
Yep.
Okay. Fred will get you what you need. So next we have Mickey.
Changes that we made in there.
Mickey?
Can I, before we move off this item, just
Call,
get
give me an
direction
email,
from
anything.
the council? You want us to work with the gentleman from the company and and then bring you back the ordinance for second reading in 2 weeks, or did you want another?
I want another discussion,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
I want
Thank
another
you.
discussion, thank you.
Another draft of this document.
So we'll have hopefully a final draft in 2 weeks, and then any tweaks that you want, and then for the second reading. you
Right,
got
that works, thank you so much. So next that had wanted to speak on the subject was Mickey, is it Perosa? I'm sorry, can you give me your last name again?
Peterson?
Oh, Peterson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Could you say your name and your address again, please?
Yes, Mickey Peterson, 2011 South Atlantic Avenue, Flamingo Inn Hotel. Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for letting me speak on this again. First of all, I really appreciate you all taking the time to discuss this, get this done right, instead of just passing something just because everybody gets fatigued. So thank you to you and the staff for doing that. And if there's going to be somebody speaking about how to put this together, I would like to be on the committee as one of the retailers to give my input. And I do not think there should be any time limit, because I am actually myself one of these adult users that you'll see riding on one of these at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I use it to check my properties, actually. So I'll be, and I haven't seen on Atlantic Avenue late at night, I haven't seen any issues with this because there's so little traffic. There's barely any people on the sidewalks. And all the scooters have excellent lighting on them, so that's really all I wanted to say. And I agree with you, Mrs. Mayor, about accompanied minors is a good thing. I'm not against my 12-year-old riding on one of these, but if he's going to be doing it on Atlantic Avenue, I'm going to be there with him until he knows the traffic laws and whatever, then maybe at that point. But at home in the neighborhood where he lives, he has a scooter like this that he owns himself. And he's had it since he was 5 years old. He has skateboards, rollerblades. I forget about what other dangerous things we have laying around. Stilts, kangaroo jumpers, and things like that. So I don't think that there should be any restrictions on the time. And as far as 12 years old riding these on the beach or in a safe manner, I think it's okay. It is advisable, of course, to be accompanied by an adult. But thank you for hearing me out.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion before we go on to new business? Okay, next we'll go on to, and Kurt, were you going to, this is consideration to approve the second lease amendment with Halifax Health.
I believe the attorney's going to address this item.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item is for the Halifax lease. As you recall, we discussed additional parking requirements for Halifax Health. They wanted to get the additional requirements as an amendment to their lease for additional spaces. And so what we're asking you to approve today is the amendment to the lease and also a memo to memorialize it that will be recorded in the public records to essentially grant them an easement for the parking. One of the things that they did at my request was that inserted provisions into both documents to ensure that the easements would terminate when the lease terminates, so that the easements aren't provided to the tenant through time eternal. And so with that amendment, I'm able to recommend approval. We have the attorney for Halifax Health here to answer any questions or to say a few words if he has something to add.
Madam Mayor, I just interject one thing real quick. Just want to make it clear, the item tonight, there's an estoppel agreement that was included with the agenda item. The attorney has asked that we pull that part of this and not include it. We'll bring that back probably in 2 weeks. There's some tweaking that needs to be done to that.
Is that our attorney that has to be pulled or
Yes.
Halifax?
Our attorney.
Right, so thank you for mentioning that. I forgot to mention that. There were 3 documents originally on here. One was an estoppel letter. I've asked that to be pulled from the agenda so that we can work out some issues with that and to bring that back in 2 weeks. And the attorney for Halifax has agreed with that. That won't stop the lease and the memo from being approved tonight, though. that's the will of council.
Okay, and do we want to hear from Halifax's attorney? Did you?
Yeah, I think she has a few things to say.
Hi. You'd like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Andrea Kurak. I'm corporate counsel for Halifax Health. Madam Mayor and council members. As Attorney Carey said, the amendment primarily deals with some access easement and parking issues, and we did include some language at the request of staff related to the city's use of parking as well, per agreements in the future. It is in the nature of easement language, but the reason that we did it as a lease amendment, as Attorney Carey indicated, was because we're going to simply file a memo of lease, and that way it is not an easement that encumbers the property forever. It simply lives for a term that's coterminous with the lease. But if there are any other questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. And did want to let you know, obviously the project is underway. We anticipate construction on the new building to be completed mid-May for opening July 1.
What is the total number of parking spaces?
So per the lease, there are 18 parking spaces, and then there are 3 additional spaces that are added by the access language.
The 21 spaces, are those for the sole use of Halifax?
So one of the things we negotiated with them was that the city can request the use of the spaces for special events by giving them, I believe it's 3 weeks notice, so that if we need to use the spaces, they can approve that, and we can ensure that no cars get towed during those special events. But the spaces are theirs by the lease to use for their customers.
And we were putting something in there too about they needed to respond in 7 days.
Correct. Yeah, so 21 days ahead of the event, we need to make a request, and then they need to let us know 7 days later, within 7 days later, if the request is approved, for us to use those spaces for the event. So I think that protects the interests of the city while also giving them the parking spaces that they need for that time.
Okay, Assistant City Manager, was there something else you wanted to add to this, or you, I know at the beginning, but you are fine with this
No,
now?
I'm comfortable with that, but I just want to reiterate that this is also one of the reasons that the Bank of America property, in my opinion, becomes vital to our use of that, continued use of our park, et cetera, for events.
Madam Mayor, could I just jump in for just 1 second?
Certainly.
I just wanted to clarify the parking. I don't know that we've got the number exactly right, but when the original design was done for this, the civil engineer had a 90-degree parking. Parking was directly across from one another, and that original lease had 18 spaces. When they modified that, they ended up having to put angle parking in so that you parked, and I think they lost 3 spaces. So now this proposal is giving them 3 spaces that I don't think was originally considered, but I don't think that number is a total of 21. I think it's still a total of 18.
That was my understanding as well.
I just want to let you guys know, it's 3 additional spaces that weren't originally contemplated.
That they lost with the redesign.
Okay, and how many spaces are in between the public safety and the Halifax? How many will be there? Does anyone know?
So outside of the leased
Yes.
premises spaces and these 3, how many are in the remaining area?
Well, now, how many spaces are there, do we know, from the building that was torn down? How many vehicles can we get in that section? Not counting anywhere else, no?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. Do you know it, Stuart?
Where the building was, there's
Yeah.
15 there.
15?
15.
Okay, all right. So in between the public safety and the new Halifax urgent care, there's 15 spaces?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No. There's about 20 that's dedicated just to the city, outside of the 18 that will be dedicated to Halifax.
Okay.
So is that 38 or?
No, 38 total spaces, right?
Stuart, do you want to
Why is it so
come?
hard? I mean,
Well, that's where the pickleball,
I think he's confused about where are you asking just how many spaces are on the leased premises? And
No, I'm asking,
Or the whole
there
park?
was no parking between public safety and the old senior center because the old section was there. Now that the old section is turned down, so I guess on the south side of the building,
Right.
how many spaces will be available?
12, and then there's an additional 3 to the west side of the new building.
And then that's 15, and then the 3 that are part of this amendment make it 18.
Okay, all right, I got it now. Thank you for the clarification.
And there is a total of 38, is that correct?
I don't know the total.
Right?
That's what I heard.
It's close.
Are you talking about the ones for pickleball too?
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know that number, but
well, I thought Stuart might know.
May I ask a
Apologize, I don't have the-
At your other hospitals, how many parking spaces do you normally have?
Or your other urgent
At your
care?
other urgent care location, as a general rule of thumb?
I'm not sure I have a good answer for that. It's going to differ from property to property, just depending on whether it's in a strip or if it's a standalone building, or, I'm not sure that there's a rule of thumb for that. But this will be our urgent care as well as the imaging center. So.
And we're happy about that too. Do I understand, Andrea, that is this correct, that this model of urgent care is one of the first you're doing in Volusia County, and you're planning on, I thought that's what Bill had told me, you're planning on doing several other, this model?
So, yes, this particular model will be one of several. Also in Port Orange and Ormond, and over on the west side of the county. But this will probably be one of the very first ones to come on.
That's what I thought. Thank you for clarifying that.
Would the imaging only be associated with the urgent care, or would it be imaging that people could come into and do the imaging as opposed to go to Port Orange Imaging?
Yes, it will be through the venture with Radiology Associates, and it will be a standalone imaging center.
We're happy about that. Well, we're looking forward for you coming to the city. Thank you very much for choosing us.
Do you have an idea of what the need for parking spaces as a function of time of day is? I assume it varies quite a bit.
I'm sorry, I don't know. I do know that many of our facilities do tend to be busier in the morning than they do later in the day.
I may be able to address that because Bill Griffin and I talked about this issue, and he said that he believes that their last imaging appointments would be 4 o'clock. So you're probably they're not going to be open at 7 or 8 or 9 at night doing imaging.
Yeah. Well, one reason I was asking is that they have the right of refusal. All we can do is ask for it. And I think maybe we might want to make it a little stronger than that. If we ask for time after 4 o'clock, that we can get it,
Well, I think the idea is at the minimum it's 21 days. But usually for big events like Taste of the Shores, we know that 6 months in advance.
I'm saying they have the right to say no.
They do.
And maybe if they don't have the demand after 4 o'clock, maybe we ought to put some words in the contract.
I mean, the reason for that is because they're leasing the spaces. So, and if they're generous enough to give some spaces back when we need them, that's a benefit to us. But because they're leasing them, we can't, I don't think, force them to. Now, both Andrea and Bill have been absolutely fabulous to work with, and to, they've met every request that we've asked for. And if the question is, can we get some language to where they're not going to enforce the parking after a certain time, I'd be willing to have that conversation with Andrea and or Bill subsequent to this meeting. I don't want to pin her down right now and make her say anything on the record, especially since Bill's not here. But they've been great to work with, and we can raise that and see if that's something that we can help.
Andrea, I know you said the date, but I missed the date. When is your expected opening date?
The target opening date is July 1.
July 1, thank you. I'm sure I get questions from residents all the time, so it's good to know.
We're very, very anxious. Thank
And
you.
that's for all the facilities.
That's for both.
Okay, so what do we need? Do we need a motion on this right now, or what do we need right now, Attorney
Yes,
Carey?
because you're approving a lease, and that requires the vote of the council.
Okay, great,
So
all right.
we'll have
So we're looking for a motion right now excluding the one area that they said that they wanted taken out.
Yes, the
So we,
motion is to approve the memorandum and the lease amendment.
okay.
I thought you were going to talk with them.
So if you would like me to, you could approve the, well, you have to decide how you want to do it. If you want to approve it or tonight, or approve it subject to any further negotiations we could make, and then just allow the mayor to sign, if we amend language, that's kind of your decision how you want to do that. So
I would propose we make the motion and move forward and have the mayor oversee it, and if she wants to make an adjustment, she can make an adjustment at the next meeting, but I see no reason to hold this up.
And I would second that.
Sounds like a motion and a second to me.
Okay, can you take a roll, please, Sherry?
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Frizzlone?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lindauer?
Yes.
Councilmember Plitus?
Yes.
Councilmember Bryan?
Yes.
Mayor Miller?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Andrea, for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Hey. All right, next we're going to move on to, and this was something I just wanted to have a discussion on. So let's go back a little bit in history. Gwen, I probably will need you, but let me do the best that I can. So before COVID last year, we had restrictions in our ordinance about outside displays, flags, and that sort. And because of COVID and the effect it was having on businesses, probably in about the last April or May timeframe, we relaxed that a lot because of what was happening with COVID, and we were having the takeout, we let them do flags. And shame on me or shame on all of us that we didn't put a sunset into that when we said, okay, you can go back and start having the flags and some of the outside displays. So consequently, 10 months to a year later, now Gwen is going out as the code enforcement officer and saying, okay, we are back to the ordinances that we had before, business as usual. So these flags that you see flapping, we're not allowed to have. I don't think there's been much on outside dining, so it's mostly been the flags. Okay, so several businesses have contacted me and they love having the flags. They feel like it's bringing in a lot of extra business. So we need to talk tonight about what we are going to do about that. So I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to ask Fred and Gwen to give theirs as well. I really don't have a lot, anything against the flags because they're very sparingly used right now. Is that fair, Gwen, to say 6, 7, 8 in the shores?
There were 4 locations using flags. It was really a smattering, because I took notes as I went around to the 21 businesses that had utilized the signage.
Mine coming up, so, okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members. When given that direction in mid-March, I went around, I spent one day basically doing it, and kept track of who was doing what to see if there was one thing that people really felt like they needed more than anything else. But it was really a smattering. Everybody was doing something a little different. There were 4 locations that had utilized those fluttering devices. I call them feather signs. There were 2 that had utilized the little sandwich, the A-frame signs. There were 5 locations that had utilized those stick signs, those realtor type stick in the ground signs. And a couple people had done some other interesting things. 5 businesses chose to put up banners and didn't have to go through the permitting processes. Some people chose to have their lights blink, which is not a normal thing that you're allowed to do, and we had relaxed all of that. So there was not one thing that everybody seemed to say, this is what's going to help me. Each business was a little different.
But everything that was done was only done during COVID. So if we're looking back to January of 2020, none of that you just described to us would have been allowed?
The banners, they could have gotten 4 banner permits a year.
Is that in the 21-day, or is that something that they could have always
Separate
got?
from the TPA, yeah. But
Separate from the TPA, all
You can
right.
get a banner permit for a month, 4 times a year.
Okay. All right, so my opinion is because we only see those feather signs right now sparingly, it really does not affect the city at all. I'm just worried about, I'm going to use 2 locations as an example. So where Pappas Plaza is, when the pizza shop comes in, and where's my Stewart with Trace Lachey, Stroud's, all of those. If everyone who wanted those flags, we'd have 6 there. Then you move up to Winn-Dixie, and I understand there might be something coming into Fest's house, and there's a nail salon, and there's that. So then, if we allow one person to do that, I'm just afraid then we do become a city of those flags going along. What I would like to see, and again, I would need everyone's opinion on this, is if they have that banner permit that they're allowed to use 4 times a year, if they have the 21 days, they can also use flags at that time?
During the TPA?
Yes.
They can choose to use, they have a temporary promotional accessory, which could be a feather sign.
Okay, all right, so they have that option to them. I'd also like to propose when a new business comes in, that they would be allowed to use the feather sign or whatever they choose of that. And, I'm open to that. It could be 14 days, it could be 30 days for their, more or less, we are open now, whatever they want to put on their sign. So I need, I'm going to go along and ask everyone what their feeling is. Most of the citizens, and we don't have a lot coming tonight, don't like, even when we did the teepee, more or less a serving. So I want to balance the businesses, that I want them to be successful, but also our citizens that don't want that circus that they call it. So, Councilman Politis, what's your feeling on all of this?
I think I agree in spirit with what you've said. I think the people from the city will kind of tell us what works and what doesn't and what's practical. Because unfortunately, we don't have a downtown, so we don't have a pedestrian traffic where that A-frame sign, which you see them in Winter Park along Park Avenue, they're elegant, they're kind of quaint. Here, it's a vehicular traffic, so those feather signs, as you call them, are more practical. But I agree with your concerns. You don't want it to look hokey. And so you have to have some kind of restrictions and some taste, maybe some quality control. So we'll delegate to Gwen and her staff. They'll give us some input, and then we'll come up with some kind of legislation that will, one, help businesses become successful or stay successful, but two, make it so it doesn't look cheesy.
Great.
I agree with you, Mayor, and I agree with Councilman Politis.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I just would like to make sure that at a minimum, we let people know, or let the businesses let people know that they're open. Because right now, some places are not open, or they are open limited hours or limited days. So just a sign that said open, and then you could take it out or move it when you're closed, just so people know the businesses are open. But
So are you saying, so my idea was like Go Juice would be able to, for 14 days or 30 days, say, now open, grand opening, we are open. Are you saying businesses that are ready, established?
yeah, I'm concerned about the people thinking that businesses, especially restaurants, let's say, because a lot of restaurants are not open, or they're open under restricted conditions. And I just got a thing from Millie's. Millie's is having trouble getting people
Staff,
to work, and they're going to close Mondays and Tuesdays. I saw another one that's closing on Mondays. So I think because it is an unusual time, I think that we do want to allow at least a sign that says open, or some way to let people know when they're open. But we could require them, if necessary, to have, this could be like a sale sign. It just says open, that's all it says. And at night, you come out and you pull it out of the ground, and when you're closed, just something to let the residents know, or let the business know, or tell the residents that they are open for business. The ones, obviously, Publix and Winn-Dixie and those kind of places wouldn't need it, but I'm talking about the mom and pop businesses, the smaller business, especially restaurants.
So do we run into the same thing that I said that I didn't want? So, in the Pappas Plaza, the pizza shop has an open, Trace, whatever it is, it says open, Stroud says open. Aren't we running into the same thing?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering whether we could have an open sign in a place like that where they can work with each other and slide their thing in. It's got one open sign that says all the businesses slide their thing in when they're open, and they pull it out when they're closed. That's just thinking outside the box, trying to.
A quick assessment of the numbers of signs that we might be talking about, if every business that's open right now, and this is just a quick, but it's about 141, and that's all but 5 of those being on the west side of the road. So that's more concentrated than spread out through the whole city. It's really, that's a lot of signage.
I do agree with your overall assessment. I don't want the city to look like a carnival. I think that's what we're all trying to avoid.
Okay, Councilman Bryan?
Are you proposing this with a sunset?
No, I really wasn't. I think this is, a compromise from what we allowed them to do last year and did not sunset it at all. So understanding how important it is to the business to be able to do this. So it's really only above, the only other thing that I'm proposing right now is when a brand-new business comes, they don't count their 4 banner days, they don't count their special, what was that, 21 days. This is over and above.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, me too.
Really just proposing that strict change to the code. I mean, I think that's an easily achieved.
Okay, Fred, do you have any other thoughts on it? Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to catch up with what you're proposing. So currently, the idea behind the TPA, one of the main ideas was grand openings and special events and that type of thing. So are we saying, would we expand the TPA to give an additional time frame, more than 21 days if it's a new business for a grand opening? So we changed that ordinance, the TPA ordinance, and then the permanent sign code we would change permanently to allow one business to have a feather banner, or
Well, they can do whatever they want for their grand opening, if that's.
their grand opening.
Yeah,
But beyond that.
Yeah, but I want the grand opening to be, because again, how many businesses did we open, less than a handful. So for those businesses, thinking at Go Juice that's in such a terrible location, hidden around high tides, something like that, if they could have that out there. When the pizza shop does open in Pappas. So those ones for their first, and it could be 2 weeks, 30 days, I'm negotiable on that, but not to have it taken out of their other chunk of time.
and no other change? Because I know Mel was talking about each one having an open sign or something.
Well, I was just wondering how we could, do we have to count the number of days that they're allowed to do it, and then they can't do it anymore? I don't know. That's a possibility. I just want the residents to be able to know that certain businesses, which they are not sure whether they are or aren't open, to let them know that they are open. I mean, I guess they could stop and check and put the burden on the residents, but I don't know if they're going to stop if they're not sure whether they're open or not.
Rather than a banner, what about a sign?
There is a temporary sign permit that you can get 30 days, one time per year, 30 days. That what I call stick signs, that you sort of like a real estate sign. We do have a permit for that already.
Let me give you a personal example. So Easter Sunday, being that I'm Italian, we forgot Italian bread. So we thought about going to Publix, and Publix is closed, and I'm driving, and I couldn't believe my eyes, but it's 12:30 in the afternoon on Easter Sunday, and the little Italian bakery had an open sign, and I'm like, good Lord, thank you. And I walked in, because Ellen was like, how could you have forgotten after cooking this dinner? And so I walked in there, and there it was, and I bought 2 loaves of bread and thanked them so much, and I would have never known it, except there was an orange sign, very small, very, very elegant, very classy, that said open.
And it was inside their restaurant.
Inside the restaurant.
They're allowed to have, is that allowed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's not supposed to be moving or blinking, but absolutely.
No, it wasn't moving or blinking. It was nice. It was very classy, very elegant. It said open. It was in orange, and I thought to myself, my Lord, thank you. And I pulled in, and just absolutely terrific. So I mean, something like that for
Would that
any
work?
restaurant.
Yeah.
Would that help you?
Yeah. Good, thank you for that story.
Yep. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
You can do that anytime.
You can be Italian and not have Italian bread on Easter Sunday. It's just you can't do it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for, so Gwen, you'll go back, and Fred, and incorporate that and bring it back to us?
Yeah, we'll modify the ordinance and bring it to P&Z and then bring it to you.
Okay, great, thank you very much, appreciate it. Okay, next we're on to council comments, and I'll go first this time. I don't know how many of you, Angie, can you put that picture up? Thank you. Okay, so we got very sad news this past Sunday. So in the middle there, Van Alder holding his dog, You know, I have to tell you a story about how this came about. The day after I got elected, Van called me. I got a lot of these calls. Hi, congratulations, I voted for you. Can you blank, 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 blank. So this one was for the dog park. You know, we've wanted a dog park for so long. Could you check into the dog park? And he said, could you head up a committee on it? So I said, could you head up a committee? And this is what I'd like to see. What's the liability to the city? Give me some locations. I had about 7 different things, and I thought, oh, that'll keep him busy for at least 2 or 3 months. I won't have to think about this because brand new mayor. So about 5 days later, he had aerial views, just everything in place. This is what I'd like to see. So unfortunately, Van lost his battle with cancer on Sunday, so he fought very long and hard for 6 years. So I just wanted to bring this picture up. I'm just so glad. I'm sure most of you know that we dedicated the park to him, and it is called the Van Alder Dog Park. He was just thrilled to have it named after him. Brought his dog down every day, made a lot of great, great friends. So just wanted to tell you, Van, we're going to miss you very, very much. Thank you for the very hard work that you did on that. Our condolences to his wife, Martha, and anyone else that knew Van have anything else to say? I know you lived in the same condo with him.
He lived in Oceans Grand, and he used to sit out on the balcony that I could see from our balcony, and I just happened to notice the last 5 or 6 months that he wasn't out there much at all. So I guess I don't know, was he in hospice or?
I'm not exactly sure. You know, he was just at the end of his battle, unfortunately.
He was well respected by almost everybody.
He loved the city. He was on our code enforcement board till we did away with that. And he said, I want to stay active. What else can I be on? So we elected him to the P&Z. And I was looking at a proclamation that we did, and we declared Van Alder Dog Park and named the city the day after him, June 5th, 2019. So I'd like to do that again, June 5th, 2021, and I'll bring that up at that time. So anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone listening to me. I will be having coffee with the mayor tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Upstairs in the rooms upstairs. Councilman Politis, do you have anything for us?
No.
Councilman Frizzolo? Okay, Vice Mayor?
I'd just like to thank the people who came, the residents, and it's always good to see the residents participating in what's going on in the city. They keep us honest.
Thank you.
I
Brian?
happened to run into John Mafucci on my way over here, and I told him I was sorry to hear about Rita. He mentioned the celebration of life on Saturday, but I forget what time.
11 o'clock at the Drive-In Christian Church. Anyone that knew John Mafucci and his wife Rita?
She passed away in the 1st of March, I think it was.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, anyone that wants to attend, it will be at the Drive-In Christian Church, so naturally it would be social distancing.
He also told me to make sure that Bob stays on the straight and narrow. I thought he didn't know what a difficult task it was.
Okay, anything else? If not, I do not have any formal requests for audience remarks. Is there anything anyone would like to say? Well, again, thank you very much for coming. Okay, thank you. Just state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ramesh Eluri. I own the property, 3400 South Atlantic.
Okay.
So there are 5 units in it. 2 of them occupied by the Surfside Tavern. And one unit is A1A Shipping.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Okay, yeah. Just put the mic up a little bit more. Okay. So you own that property where A1A Shipping is?
Property I own, yes.
Okay.
And there are 2 more units on the south end of the building, not able to rent for more than 6 years. There's a real estate office, inside a lot of cubicles, and is not useful for anybody. I waited for so long, I couldn't able to rent it. So now I decided to dismantle all the floor plan and conveniently do it renting. So the gentleman's name is Mike. He wanted to do the body artwork, and we met the city planner today, Mr. Stewart. And one of the requirement is 1,500 feet from the public park. So he mentioned 1,340 feet is north end of the property. but this is south end of the property, he's going to rent it. So the front is more than 150 feet or something. It definitely more than, requirement is 1,500, I think it is going to meet the requirement. Also, I see on the Google, it says that 1,584 feet. So only thing whether it is going to be 1,340 or 1,580, but please allow to rent the unit.
Stuart, can you come up and explain a little bit more? Is he talking about some regulation that we have? Yeah, you're in the best hands here with Mr. Cruz.
Yes, we talked to him.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. So I met with the property owner today, and I met with
This gentleman here?
Yes, Mr. Urilli. And the prospective tenant that he has yesterday, Mr. Mike, I don't remember Mr. Mike's last name, but essentially, Mr. Mike wants to establish a body art or tattoo establishment at this property at 3400 South Atlantic Avenue. The city's code require for this particular zoning district that any property where you have body art must be at least 1,500 feet from a public park, churches, things of that nature. And the location is about 1,340 feet away. So it doesn't meet the minimum separation from Larry Fenari Park. So it doesn't meet the minimum distance requirement. And so I believe what the property owner is asking is for the city council to consider perhaps amending the code or giving some sort of leniency towards that particular requirement so that he can rent the space out that has been vacant for about 3 years or so.
Stuart, should just go to planning and zoning first?
So what we would have, the staff would have to get direction. So there's two routes that he has if he wanted to pursue this. One is to apply for a variance before the Planning and Zoning Board. That's not what he's doing here tonight. What he's asking the legislative body, which is the city council, to do tonight is to direct staff or the city attorney to go ahead and draft something up that would allow him to have the business established at this particular location. So in other words, remove the 1,500 feet distance separation and probably reduce it to 1,300 or something of that nature.
So this isn't the form that we would normally do for audience comments. So what I would want you to do is bring it to us, in a formal.
Okay, so if this is what the city council wants us to do, I can definitely work with John
I don't. Again, I think we're caught a little off guard, that we don't have it in a formal ordinance and that someone's coming up. So I think right now, if anything, we would have to bring it up for the next meeting. Do you agree?
I agree with the mayor. I have another questions. What's behind it? Is there, is there schools? Is there, what's that 160 feet?
Okay, again, if this is something that the city council wants, staff can do the research. We can work with the attorney. Obviously, Fred's going to be involved, and we can come up with a proposal. And then if that is what the city council wants us to do, what we would do in terms of process is we would take this to the Planning and Zoning Board first for a recommendation.
Have we ever had a request before that we have turned down for, is this called body art?
Yeah, so it's basically a tattoo parlor.
Okay,
So I get calls maybe once, twice, sometimes 3 or 4 times a month with people wanting to establish tattoo parlors here in the Shores, and I read them the requirement, and they give me the address, and I would do a GIS type mapping to determine what the separation is from a church or from a park or whatever the requirement is. And if it doesn't meet it, I would tell them, it doesn't meet the requirement, and they would, more than likely be upset with me and ask me to change the rules, and I would tell them I don't have the authority. You could either apply for a variance if you can demonstrate a legal hardship, or you can petition the city council to have the rules changed. Or you can go to a different city, and most people would just try to go to a different city.
What's wrong with taking it to the city, planning and zoning, applying for a variance?
That is a question you'd have to ask the property owner, but generally there has to be a legal, unique hardship demonstrated to the board. In other words, there's a legal test that's based in case study that has been to the Supreme Court that allows a local government to grant a variance from its, or a deviation from its local rules.
But again, I'm struck.
Richard, when I was
Okay,
on-
let's, okay.
It's not appropriate form.
I'm struggling. Why can't planning and zoning should listen to this first? Am I wrong in that? I mean,
So So he's not applying for a variance at this time. He had two options, and generally, whenever a law is being petitioned to be changed, it comes from either the city or it comes through the city from an outside entity. And this particular property owner would like to have the city consider changing the rules. If the city council directs staff or the city attorney to come up with a proposal to change the rules, then we will do so and we'll take it to the planning and zoning board, and then for a recommendation, then it will come to city council. Other than that, if the city council says no tonight, we don't want to entertain this, then his only other option would be to apply for a variance where he has to meet that legal test, or just go somewhere else.
May I speak, Madam Mayor?
Certainly.
It's not on the agenda. This is not the normal protocol. I remember a homeowner wanting to put a second floor above his garage and not change the footprint, and he had to hire an attorney, go through the process with you and staff, and then ultimately it came to us. So you can't come up when it's citizens' comments and request us to do something. As Madam Mayor said, we are caught off guard. I want to hear from you, Stuart. I'd like to see an artist rendering of what it's going to look like. I want to hear from, I think neighbors should be noticed, the neighbors and stuff. So I would not be directing you to do anything tonight. And I'm sure my fellow city councilmen have their own opinions, but I bet they agree.
No, I agree.
One point of clarification. So the city doesn't have an application process for an outside entity to formally petition the council for a change. And so in that case that you mentioned, Councilmember Politis, there was actually a special exception application process that's codified in our code for that applicant to come before the Planning and Zoning Board and then eventually to the City Council. Whereas in this case, we don't have that ability. We don't have a formal process to change the code. So typically what they would do is they would try to meet with if they wanted the rules changed, they would try to meet with staff or try to meet with the mayor or some other city council member and see if there's support for such an activity or such a movement. And because we understand as staff how sensitive body art is here in Daytona Beach Shores, I essentially just told the guy, look, you either apply for a variance or you can petition the city council at the meeting tonight. So I'm the one that told him to come here tonight because we don't have a formal process. In other cities, there's a formal process, and I'm sure John and Fred could probably attest to this. There's a formal process to try to amend one's code, a city's code, but we don't have that.
Can I make a suggestion? Can you and this gentleman meet with the mayor and talk about this, and then let the mayor come to the council and make a recommendation to her fellow council members? Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else that wants to speak? Okay, do we have any items recommended for the next agenda?